Howdy, hey, what's up? Welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be going over everything that I read for Asian Readathon. So Asian Readathon was started by With Cindy. It happens throughout the month of May, which is Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the United States, but she makes it like a worldwide thing. She has a Storygraph, which has a directory of Asian writers, as well as the prompts for each year. This year, she based it off of Joyride, the movie. So we have 5 prompts that we could fill however we want. This year's prompt was number 1, the freebie, written by an Asian author. Number 2 was read a book featuring at least 2 Asian characters and their friendship. Number 3 was read a book about an Asian character going on an adventure. Number 4 was read a book about an Asian character going through self-identity or discovering themselves. And number 5 was read a book written by an Asian author or featuring an Asian character where they are a hot mess or famous or something else. I don't know. Mine were all hot messes. And then there was a bonus challenge of making sure that every book you read was from a different Asian subgroup. So the first book I read for this was The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O. I read it digitally on my Kindle and I rated it 4 stars. So it's a Korean myth retelling about a girl who takes the place of her brother's love interest to become the sea god. It's in this world where there's a lot of monsoons and there's famine and there's drought all at the same time, so everything's kind of dying and the people are not really having a fun time. But they still have their faith in the gods. And one reason why they're having a hard time Earth-wise is because long ago, so the reason they're having a hard time is because the sea god was like a lover slash best friend. It was kind of ambiguous with the emperor, and the emperor gets killed. So the sea god, in a rage, is like, you must give me something to replace this. So since then, they have been sacrificing women into the sea every year for them to become the sea god's bride. Unfortunately, none of the sea god's brides that they've sent down have been able to end the mayhem that the world is having for long term. Therefore, they keep doing it every year. We start off this book with our main character, Mina, as she is watching her brother's love become the person that is sacrificed for the sea god. Now, her brother is also like going to fight this. So what happens is they basically break all of the rules when it comes to sacrificing the sea god, and instead of letting her brother's love jump in, she sacrifices herself instead. And then there's this whole thing about her being in the spirit world and it being not exactly what she seemed. So not only is she fighting for her own life, she's fighting to free the sea god from his curse, and then also discovering why the gods seem to have taken a step back in their ability to answer their prayers. I really enjoyed reading this. I thought it was a fun read. I liked when I picked up the book and read it. Unfortunately, every time I set it down, I never super felt the need to pick it back up. But when I was reading it, I was enjoying my time. I thought it was very beautiful. I thought all of the connections lined up really well. And the twist-ish that comes at the end, I called right from the beginning. But I think that's just like a fantasy-ish trope. Nothing against it for that. And then I put The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea as categorized for friendship between two characters, because it really does start off as a friendship first, as well as there's a bunch of other little friendships that happened and a lot of other relationships that happen that we explore throughout this. Honestly, if I had just read this book, it probably could have been stretched to fit the entire challenge, as it does have best friends, it does have her becoming famous, it does have her going on an adventure, it does have her going through self-identity, and it is written by an Asian author. But I wanted to do more than just one book, so the next book that I read was The Fortunes of Jaded Women. Now, this is a Vietnamese book following 3 generations, so there is a cast of characters. And let me tell you, the family tree that was in here was more beneficial to me than any other fantasy map I've ever had. Like, I'm so glad that there was a family map at the beginning of this to help me realize who was who when we talked, because every single chapter is from someone else's point of view, and we have like a main 8, but also maybe a main 10 women that we follow throughout this, as well as like their love interests that we hit every so often as well. So it was a time trying to understand this book. I also kept reading books while in the middle of this one, so it took me a while to read this one, even though the start of it hit me right away. Anyway, the basic plot of this book is this family has a curse on them because one of their ancestors was like, I'm not going to marry someone that I was arranged to marry. I'm going to leave Vietnam and go to, I think it was Cambodia, with the love of her life. So her ex-mother-in-law places a curse on the entire family to where they will never have sons, and they will also so they will never have sons, and then they will also always marry terrible men that will never invite their family spirits to their altar. So when they die, they will wander aimlessly forever. So we follow this family as the main mother, I guess, as the main mother goes and visits a fortune teller who tells her that there will be a death, there will be a funeral, a wedding, and a birth, and that the birth will be a grandson and break the curse. So we go throughout the entire family's estrangement because none of them like each other anymore at this point. I mean, in the second generation, they have not talked to each other in years, in 10 years, I think. And in the third generation, they all like resent their moms and the trauma that they put on them. And from the main mom's character, her 3 daughters haven't also talked to her in like a year and are no longer in California and are doing their own things. So this entire book goes through them reconciling and breaking the curse. And it is messy, it is drama-filled, and sometimes it's a little hard to keep track of who you are following and who is who. Overall, I rated this book 3.5 stars. It was a fun read. I put this under the prompt hot mess because all of them are. And then I also made friendship maybe because we go through all of the cousins doing their friendship, as well as all the sisters of every generation reconciling and regaining their sisterhood friendship. The next book I read was Severance by Ling Ma. Now this was a post-apocalyptic pandemic book that was written in 2018. So it was very interesting to see this pandemic event happen and how much she got right a year or two before our pandemic actually hit. We follow Candace, who is a Chinese-American immigrant, through 2 timelines. The first timeline is her working for a publishing press that in the Bible division, and it's this super capitalistic job that like doesn't care about their people's lives. They only care about their bottom line. So one of the things that happens is they're making like this gemstone Bible, and her first company that she was going to use closes out because the first company she is going to use closes out because the carving of the gemstones was affecting the workers' lungs and they were having a strike. But the company who ordered the gemstone Bibles was like, no, you do it or we will take it. The company who ordered the gemstone Bibles was like, no, you do it, we don't care, or we will take it to someone else who will do it. Anyway, we go through her normal life, and as it changes when she's living in New York, as the fever hits and people become not necessarily like attack you zombies, but they do become zombies of habit. In the second timeline that runs, we are after the fever is hit. Candace has left New York and she is joined up with these survivors. who are also somehow immune, maybe, to the fever like she is. And we go through her kind of discovering herself and figuring out herself and kind of discovering where she fits in this group of survivors. I really enjoyed this book. It left a lot of things questioning, and it was really, again, interesting to see the pandemic of this sort play out, as well as have a different type of zombie. This book is also a major critique on capitalism and maybe also religion/cults. So I would totally check out this really short read. It was fun, but I totally understand if you are not able to read a pandemic book at this time or ever will be able to. And this book fell under the prompt of self-discovery and going on an adventure because she leaves New York. One of the reviews I saw as I was flipping through, and I'll put it right here, is this is the ultimate why I left New York story. And then the final book that I read for this kind of cheats because it's another Chinese author or Chinese American author. Oh my god. That was a spider or something. The last book I read for Asian Readathon is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This book follows Juniper Song Hayward as she goes through starting initially being a low-selling author next to her friend / enemy / we went to college together and we're going through the same thing, so we're just sticking together and updating ours and occasionally hanging out. Person Athena, who is a hotshot debut best-selling amazing author with great words and literary prose, as she dies choking on a pancake in like the first 3 chapters. And in this, June steals Athena's manuscript about the Chinese labor camps in World War I, or the Chinese laborers in World War I, and then edits it and publishes it herself. And then we go through her dealing with the ramifications of being a white person who published a Chinese book, the suspicion that maybe she plagiarized from her friend, as well as the entire publishing industry on its own, and maybe also being haunted by her friend. This book was a ride. It was a mess. It was so much like a mess in a good way because the main character was a mess. It was so fun to read and like pick through because June is also not the most reliable narrator because half the time she'll say that she took Athena's She took Athena's like basically illiterate manuscript and edited it and basically made it her own, and barely anything except the bones were Athena's. And then she would also have the time be like, well, they're critiquing a sentence that Athena wrote, so it shouldn't hit me that way. So you're sitting there the entire time being like, is this mostly Athena's? Is this mostly June's? And does it even matter? We also go through the loneliness that happens in publishing, and once you become a published writer, how your workshops stop becoming multifaceted with a bunch of people reading it and then become just kind of you and your editor. It also kind of goes through the publishing process from selling a manuscript all the way to publishing and then even selling off the rights to movies. It also, of course, talks a lot about plagiarism. And then, as you would guess, from the title of Yellowface and from a white person stealing a Chinese person's manuscript and publishing it featuring mostly Chinese people, it talks a lot about racism. In my opinion, some of the racism was a little heavy-handed. Like, I appreciate the Twitter discourse, and I probably appreciate the Twitter discourse because I'm also not on Twitter, so it's fun seeing Twitter that far away, you know, at an arm's length. And then also seeing her spiral from reviews and all this other thing, and then also hoping And I liked that aspect of the playing with racism, but occasionally it did become too heavy-handed, where even scenes that you didn't think would be appropriate for talking about racism, because they were so disconnected from Juniper Song and her publishing her book, that it seemed unlikely that literally every single conversation was about racism. So yeah, overall gave it a 4.5 stars. I super loved it. I'm probably gonna read it again in a year or two. And I enjoyed the ending too, because I called the ending but different. I thought someone else was gonna end up there. If you've read the book, you know. This one technically only falls under written by an Asian author, as it does not feature a main character who is Asian. So I think this is a good book for like book clubs where you are okay like talking about hard stuff to talk about, or politically charged stuff, I would say, because I don't know if it's necessarily a hard thing to talk about. You're just trying to like... Anyway, this book opens up a lot of conversations to a lot of things, be it loneliness, be it plagiarism, be it racism. I think it was a home run. It was solid. And it was a fun thriller with that slight haunting, you know, is this really her ghost? Is this a troll? How much does this person actually know? So, loved it. I loved it. You read it. So that was all 4 books that I read for the Asian Readathon. I had so much fun exploring this. I wish that I had gotten to more. I wish that I had done more research beforehand, other than just picking up books that I was just like, oh, this one is written by an Asian author, let's go, and then I'll figure out how to cram it into the other plots later. So yeah, doing this Asian Readathon was fun. I totally plan on doing it again next year. I have linked Cindy's original video in the description below. Did you participate in Asian Readathon? If you did, what books did you read for it? And what prompts did you find most challenging? If you did not participate, will you participate next year? And are there any other author reading challenges that you follow? Anyway, that's been me. I'm Jessica, and remember, we are all in progress.